As a disclaimer, the video games I play in this video are games that I thoroughly enjoy. I do not find them to be a grind. However, we need to make sure that beloved franchises do not turn into the grindfest that certain ones are. Thank you very much for viewing, and I hope you enjoy. The term grind is really an odd term to use in video games. Video games are supposed to be a break from the daily grind. It gives you a break from the job that is not your dream job or your daily school routine. Video games are supposed to make you feel a cocktail of emotions such as triumph, determination, excitement, terror, sad, and happy. But to feel as though a video game is more of a chore to play rather than the mix of emotions I just stated, well, that's not a very fun emotion now, is it? A grind to play? A chore? No, we don't want that in our video games. At least games didn't feel like a chore to play back in the 80s and 90s, and if they did, they only lasted in the arcade for no more than a month or ended up being forgotten on store shelves. Of course, video games have come a long way with their responsive controls, crisp graphics, and integration, so playing a game from the 80s and 90s today could feel a bit like a chore, I guess, but in no way would we consider playing games like GoldenEye, Mario Kart, Duck Hunt, or even Pong a game in where you have to use the term grind. Could you imagine somebody saying, yeah, I was playing Duck Hunt yesterday and I was grinding it out trying to shoot that dog. Boy, I just could not get him. However, I shot down like 200 ducks, so I was grinding real hard on that game. The sad thing is, however, despite how far video games have come over the past several decades, we have been hearing the word grind or grindfest for the past several years now. You read reviews or forums or even strategies that blatantly tell you to grind for several hours to rack up hundreds of thousands of points or even millions of points to get what it is that you want, whether or not it's a cosmetic item or something that affects gameplay. To put it straightforward, I understand the use of the term grind is mainly used in role-playing games, massive multiplayer games, where in order for you to get the items for your character, you have to play the same levels, the same encounters, with the exact same narrative, over and over and over again, equaling days upon days of gameplay. Or you could just spend $2 and get the beloved item right then and there with a microtransaction. But that doesn't necessarily mean that you earned it exactly, now does it? No, but instead you bypass the week's worth of grinding. So what is exactly the problem? Is it the microtransactions, or is it the monotonous gameplay? I have the answer. It's really, at the core, the repetitive gameplay. And microtransactions are linked up to this. So let me just explain. You see, when you're older and you have more money than you have time, unless you have a crap load of Berbers, microtransactions are not really a big deal to you. You don't have the time to spend 600 hours to play repetitive gameplay that is even labeled by its own developers as a grind. So you think, well, let me just spend the $2 and get the item that I want. That's pretty cool. And I could invest a few days into this game and eventually beat it and say, oh, that was fun for the month that I played the game. This is the reason why microtransactions still exist, and they seem to be getting more abundant and worse over time. People that do have more money than they have time are going to purchase these small items. The flip side to this is that developers understand that there are different demographics in their game. So what they do is they make their game repetitive, copy and paste all over the place, and make it to where almost anyone would want to purchase the microtransactions. Almost anyone. I personally do not condone microtransactions, because if I want to spend time in a video game, I'm going to find time eventually in my schedule. I know that I'm not going to just be able to get what I want immediately. It's going to take some time, and a lot of games that I get are games that I know I'm going to like. Therefore, I know I'm going to take the time playing the game, not grinding. Now, if you've accepted some games that have you grind and you accept the term grind in a positive way, I have to tell you something. You have to tread lightly. This is a warning, and here's the reason why. Game developers, they look out after their game. Once they make a game, and especially if they're in a franchise where they're going to make plenty more sequels of that game, they read the YouTube comments. And when they see somebody say something like, oh yeah, I had to grind out for so many hours and rack up so many points, well, game developers might actually take that comment as a positive. They may look at it as, oh, this person, they've already accepted that they had to grind for so long. Let's keep on doing this. But don't you see where this is a problem? This promotes lazy development. When developers have to create a level in a game, first they'll start off at the beginning of the game as a way to introduce the player into flanking maneuvers, or they'll give them little tutorials on how to crouch or how to jump. And then they'll think, okay, after 5 minutes walking through the level, what should we do in this certain location? Oh, let's go ahead and spawn a whole bunch of cannon fodder. But let's not just spawn cannon fodder in this area, let's go ahead and repeat this every other 5 minutes. This is when the game starts to get repetitive, where it's the same encounters, just over and over and over again, in certain locations that just feel way too similar. And this is where the grindfest starts. For role-playing games and massive multiplayer online games, it might be a little bit more welcomed. But for a first-person shooter, well, that's when it's very detrimental. You see, a first-person shooter campaign is typically around 8 to 10 to 12 hours, and within those 8 to 10 to 12 hours, the campaign has to captivate the player's attention and emotions. Now, if you have a multiplayer in a first-person shooter that just feels like a grind, well, then you just don't have a very consistent game, now do you? Game developers can have items where the player has to keep on playing for hours and hours and hours and get so many points to unlock a certain item, but they should never make the player feel as if they're grinding in their multiplayer game. See, the multiplayer mode should have so much depth to it that gamers would just say to their buddies, their friends, or themselves, you know what, let's go ahead and play some Battlefield, instead of, okay, I have to grind out another 12 hours so I can get the item I want. I mean, that's just sad. That's not what a video game is supposed to be. Unfortunately, a lot of games are like that these days. And I do believe the fans, the consumers, we have a little bit of something to do with it. Instead of accepting games to have the characteristics of repetitive, monotonous, grindfest type of gameplay, maybe we should get on the same page when using the term grind as something negative, not something that we expect and we will put ourselves through a grindfest of hundreds of hours. Let's keep game developers in check by letting them know that there is a major difference between grinding and just playing the game and enjoying it. The video games that you see me playing in this video here, such as Halo 5, Left 4 Dead, Battlefield 4, and Counter-Strike, I feel have a lot of depth in their multiplayer and in their campaign. Despite the negative reception that Halo 5 gets from a lot of Halo fans out there, how they don't really like where 343 Industries has taken the Halo franchise, I still find every single Halo game to have a lot of depth in their multiplayer and in their campaign. I've never considered any Halo game to feel like a grind, because they're just that fun to play. Halo Reach progression system is probably one of the most rewarding, yet also one of the most time-consuming if you really want those high-ticket items. But I never felt as if I was grinding it out just to rack up so many credits in Halo Reach. Back when it was released in 2010 and all the way to now, 2018, I really just enjoy playing the game, Halo Reach. I never felt as if I was grinding away in firefight mode. I was just playing the game. Sniper Elite 4 is also a great example of a game where you don't grind out so many different kills and points just to get to a certain weapon or a cosmetic item on your weapon. It's really a game where you just play the game and you unlock these different weapons as you go, or you could just purchase them through a microtransaction. Unlocking these items by playing on the hardest difficulty and not alerting any of the guards, I believe is a much more fun way of playing the game without having to feel like you're grinding for something. And one final example of a great video game, or video game franchise for that matter, is the Left 4 Dead series. This one in this video being Left 4 Dead 2. What's funny is that I've never heard anybody say that the Left 4 Dead series feels like a grindfest, despite how many zombies you actually kill. Valve, the developers for the Left 4 Dead series, they do such a great job in bringing in hordes and hordes of zombies for you to fight. Now, certain game developers, I feel if they were to make a game like Left 4 Dead, it would feel very much of a grindfest if they had all these zombies attacking you like every single 5 minutes or so. But Valve, they do something a little bit different. Valve has the cannon fodder zombies that are just regular zombies, but they also have classes for the zombies that are very distinct from one another. This is what prevents the Left 4 Dead series feeling like a grindfest. And because of this, the Left 4 Dead series is so successful, even with the latest one being released way back in 2009. It is apparent that there are some gamers out there that enjoy a game that has repetitive, monotonous gameplay that starts to feel like a grind within the first 5 minutes. The only thing I want you to take away from this video is that us as the gamers, and maybe any game developers that are watching this video, playing a game that feels like a grind is not going to get the gaming industry anywhere. For the video game industry to continue advancing in the right direction, we have to see video games, especially AAA titles, really blow us away by not staying trendy. So before this video starts to sound like a grind in itself, I'm going to go ahead and close it off here with me saying that I'm excited for the upcoming Far Cry 5. I know a lot of you guys might say that the Far Cry series has gotten repetitive, maybe you even considered it a grind fest, but I do have high hopes for Far Cry 5. I can't wait for it to be released, and I can't wait to use the map editor in that game. I'm going to be making some maps and I'll show it to you guys. And if you also like creepypastas, go ahead and subscribe to this channel. I write and narrate my own creepypastas myself. So, thank you very much, and I'll see you in the next video.